Genesis, the prime source for the biblical verses quoted in the 12th planet, is the Old Testament in its original Hebrew text. It must be borne in mind that all the translations consulted, of which the principal ones are listed at the end of the book, are just that, translations or interpretations. In the final analysis, what counts is what the original Hebrew says. In the final version quoted in the 12th planet, I have compared the available translations against each other, and against the Hebrew source, and the parallel Sumerian and Akkadian text/tales, to come up with what I believe is the most accurate rendering. The rendering of Sumerian, Assyrian, Babylonian, and Hittite texts has engaged a legion of scholars for more than a century. Decipherment of script and language was followed by transcribing, transliterating, and finally, translating. In many instances, it was possible to choose between differing translations or interpretations only by verifying the much earlier transcriptions and transliterations. In other instances, a late insight by a contemporary scholar could throw new light on an early translation. The list of sources for Eastern texts, given at the end of this book, thus ranges from the oldest to the newest, and is followed by the scholarly publications, in which valuable contributions to the understanding of the texts were found. The Old Testament has filled my life from childhood. When the seed for this book was planted, nearly 50 years ago, I was totally unaware of the then raging evolution versus Bible debates. But as a young schoolboy studying Genesis in its original Hebrew, I created a confrontation of my own. We were reading one day in chapter VI that when God resolved to destroy mankind by the great flood, the sons of the deities, who married the daughters of men, were upon the earth. The Hebrew original named them Nephilim. The teacher explained it meant giants, but I objected, didn't it mean literally those who were cast down, who had descended to earth? I was reprimanded and told to accept the traditional interpretation. In the ensuing years, as I have learned the languages and history and archaeology of the ancient Near East, the Nephilim became an obsession. Archaeological finds and the deciphering of Sumerian, Babylonian, Assyrian, Hittite, Canaanite, and other ancient texts and epic tales increasingly confirmed the accuracy of the biblical references to the kingdoms, cities, rulers, places, temples, trade routes, artifacts, tools, and customs of antiquity. Is it not now time, therefore, to accept the word of these same ancient records regarding the Nephilim as visitors to earth from the heavens? The Old Testament repeatedly asserted the throne of Yahweh is in heaven. From heaven did the Lord behold the earth. The New Testament spoke of our Father, which art in heaven. But the credibility of the Bible was shaken by the advent and general acceptance of evolution. If man evolved, then surely he could not have been created all at once by a deity, who, premeditating, had suggested, let us make Adam in our image and after our likeness. All the ancient peoples believed in gods who had descended to earth from the heavens and who could at will soar heavenwards. But these tales were never given credibility, having been branded by scholars from the very beginning as myths. The writings of the ancient Near East, which include a profusion of astronomical texts, clearly speak of a planet from which these astronauts or gods had come. However, when scholars, 50 and 100 years ago, deciphered and translated the ancient lists of celestial bodies, our astronomers were not yet aware of Pluto, which was only located in 1930. How then could they be expected to accept the evidence of yet one more member of our solar system? But now that we too, like the ancients, are aware of the planets beyond Saturn, why not accept that ancient evidence for the existence of the 12th planet? As we ourselves venture into space, a fresh look and an acceptance of the ancient scriptures is more than timely. Now that astronauts have landed on the moon, and unmanned spacecraft explore other planets, it is no longer impossible to believe that a civilization on another planet more advanced than ours was capable of landing its astronauts on the planet Earth sometime in the past. Indeed, a number of popular writers have speculated that ancient artifacts such as the pyramids and giant stone sculptures must have been fashioned by advanced visitors from another planet, for surely primitive man could not have possessed by himself the required technology. How was it, for another example, that the civilization of Sumer seemed to flower so suddenly nearly 6,000 years ago without a precursor? But since these writers usually fail to show when, how, and, above all, from where such ancient astronauts did come, their intriguing questions remain unanswered speculations. It has taken 30 years of research, of going back to the ancient sources, of accepting them literally, to recreate in my own mind a continuous and plausible scenario of prehistoric events. The 12th planet, therefore, seeks to provide the reader with a narrative giving answers to the specific questions of when, how, why, and where from. The evidence I adduce consists primarily of the ancient texts and pictures themselves. In the 12th planet I have sought to decipher a sophisticated cosmogony which explains, perhaps as well as modern scientific theories, how the solar system could have been formed, and an aiding planet caught into solar orbit, and Earth and other parts of the solar system brought into being. The evidence I offer includes celestial maps dealing with space flight to Earth from that planet, the 12th. Then, in sequence, follow the dramatic establishment of the first settlements on Earth by the Nephilim. Their leaders were named, their relationships, loves, jealousies, achievements, and struggles described, the nature of their immortality explained. Above all, the 12th planet aims to trace the momentous events that led to the creation of man, and the advanced methods by which this was accomplished. It then suggests the tangled relationship between man and his lords, and throws fresh light on the meaning of the events in the Garden of Eden, of the Tower of Babel, of the Great Flood. Finally, man, endowed by his makers biologically and materially, ends up crowding his gods off the earth. This book suggests that we are not alone in our solar system. Yet it may enhance rather than diminish the faith in a universal Almighty. For if the Nephilim created man on Earth, they may have only been fulfilling a vaster master plan. Sitchin, New York, February 1977. The endless beginning of the evidence that we have amassed to support our conclusions. Exhibit number 1 is man himself. In many ways, modern man, Homo sapiens, is a stranger to Earth. Ever since Charles Darwin shocked the scholars and theologians of his time with the evidence of evolution, life on Earth has been traced through man, and the primates, mammals, and vertebrates, and backward through ever lower life forms to the point, billions of years ago, at which life is presumed to have begun. But having reached these beginnings, and having begun to contemplate the probabilities of life elsewhere in our solar system, and beyond, the scholars have become uneasy about life on Earth somehow. It does not belong here. If it began through a series of spontaneous chemical reactions, why does life on Earth have but a single source, and not a multitude of chance sources? And why does all living matter on Earth contain too little of the chemical elements that abound on Earth, and too much of those that are rare on our planet? Was life, then, imported to Earth from elsewhere? Man's position in the evolutionary chain has confounded the puzzle. Finding a broken skull here, a Jew there, scholars at first believed that man originated in Asia some 500,000 years ago. But as older fossils were found, it became evident that the mills of evolution grind much, much slower. Man's ancestor apes are now placed at a staggering 25 million years ago. Discoveries in East Africa reveal a transition to man-like apes hominids some 14 million years ago. It was about 11 million years later that the first ape man worthy of the classification Homo appeared there. The first being considered to be truly man-like, advanced Australopithecus existed in the same part of Africa some 2 million years ago. It took yet another million years to produce Homo erectus. Finally, after another 900,000 years, the first primitive man appeared. He is named Neanderthal, after the site where his remains were first found. In spite of the passage of more than 2 million years between advanced Australopithecus and Neanderthal, the tools of these two groups, sharp stones, were virtually alike, and the groups themselves, as they are believed to have looked, were hardly distinguishable. Then, suddenly, and inexplicably, some 35,000 years ago, a new race of men, Homo sapiens thinking man, appeared, as if from nowhere, and swept Neanderthal man from the face of Earth. These modern men, named Cro-Magnon, looked so much like us that, if dressed like us in modern clothes, they would be lost in the crowds of any European or American city. Because of the magnificent cave art which they created, they were at first called cavemen. In fact, they roamed it freely, for they knew how to build shelters and homes.